Welcome. Thank you all for tuning in to the very first episode of Colby's Corner podcast. I'm excited to be here with my new coach, new head men's basketball coach at Wichita State, Mr. Paul Mills. How you doing today?
Man, I'm great. I'm honored to be the first guest, Colby's Corner. Colby, everybody just calls you Cole, so it's going to take me some time to remember Colby's Corner, but honored to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you coming, man. Thank you. So, how's it been in Wichita so far?
It's been great. The people here have been wonderful. Everybody's been really receptive to me, to my family. You want that, but also realize that it's a job, and we haven't lost a game yet. So everybody's really kind at the moment. But I expect them to be kind regardless. But Wichita is a wonderful city. Heard people brag about it from a number of different places, whether friends in New York, friends in California. So everything's been great.
That's good, man. Yeah, the fans they're definitely supportive. Win or lose, you're definitely going to hear from them. But, that's a good thing. I feel
it is. I have a friend, Jerome Tang. He's the head coach at Kansas State, and we were together for 14 years at Baylor. And his first year at K-State, he was National Coach of the Year. And he's just an incredible guy. We probably talk once a day. But he told me, he says, you want a passionate fan base. Like whatever you do, you want a passionate fan base. And I know that's the case here at Wichita State.
Yeah, he didn't lie with that one. So I want to jump right in. What was it like? You're from Houston, correct?
From Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. I never really been to Houston for an extended period of time, but what was it like growing up in Houston?
Yeah, I tell people that my father was a pastor, and I was like any other kid growing up in Houston. I wanted Jays. I was the biggest Michael Jordan fan you probably ever met. I stayed out all night, slept in a parking lot in a car with my mom, and met Michael during his second year. Stayed in line all night. We slept in the car, got in. But I wanted Jays, and my mom told me we can only buy things we can eat, so we can't buy Jays. I know my dad made $100 a week. Being a pastor, and I know that because I requested Jays so much, and she reminded me what my dad made. But in America, the sport of the poor is basketball. In Europe and Africa and other countries, it's soccer. And so I couldn't afford a baseball bat or a baseball glove, and I couldn't afford a helmet or shoulder pads, but I could run down to the end of the street and play with 15 other kids, and just loved it. Loved it. City of Houston was great. There were a number of players who were coming out at that time, at that particular era. We had Phi Slamma Jamma going on in Houston. So I saw Clyde Drexler, Akeem Olajuwon in college, and I grew up in that environment. And just you wanted to be a guy who was good enough to make an impact at basketball. And so loved it. The city of Houston was great for that, and it kind of fueled a passion in me that you never even knew you had.
Yeah, speaking of Jays, my very first pair of Jays, the Gamma Blue 12s. My mom and dad told me they weren't going to get them. And there's a store called Hibbett Sports. I don't know if they're around.
I know who Hibbett Sports is.
Yeah, so they this one you could wait in line for Jays. There was no sneakers app or nothing like that. And they waited in line till like 4 a.m, 5 a.m. You had to get a raffle ticket. And eventually I got the Jays for Christmas.
Surprised you with them, huh?
Yeah, surprised me with them because I didn't get the Gamma Blue 11s that came out like a week before. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to get no Jays, whatever. So then they surprised me with that, and that was my first pair, and that kind of started my little sneakerhead.
What wonderful parents to take all that time to know it's something that you're interested in and make that kind of sacrifice. That's impressive.
Yeah. So coaching. What got you started in coaching? What got you started working?
Well, I'm probably like every other guy that starts in coaching. Is for me, Quincy AC, who's on our staff, played 10 years professionally, 7 years in the NBA. I think he just recognizes when the door closes and you're passionate about basketball, and then you move into coaching like he has. He's been with the Dallas Mavericks. My door closed when I was like 19. So as much as I wished my gift was playing, what I realized was my gift was helping. I cracked the bottom vertebrae along my spine, and the doctors told me you'll never play basketball again. Ouch. And it was painful. You can imagine being a teenager. I was shocked I wasn't one and done. And I thought I was going to the league at 18 and was kind of surprised that it never happened. But I knew I wanted to be involved in the game. And so because I was poor, I saw what basketball did for me. It paid for college. It allowed opportunities to travel that I otherwise wouldn't get. So I wanted to tell everybody else in the neighborhood about this opportunity, that if you could approach the game the right way, there are benefits out there for you that you don't even know about at this time. And then would help guys, and they would go on to get paid in the NBA, and that kind of became my drug. Like, how do I help these kids who come from similar socioeconomic situations as I do? How do I help them make an impact for themselves and for their families? So I just jumped into helping guys through the game of basketball. And the more you watched it happen and the more successful you watch guys become, the more and more you wanted to help. So it's one of those that I wish I was a good enough player to have played a long time. It wasn't the case, but coaching kind of helping younger kids, inner city kids who grew up the way I did, move on in the game of basketball was kind of my drug.
Yeah, but we all know it's up and downs with this game. It's up and downs with life. I see that you started coaching at Northbelt Christian Academy.
Yeah.
How was that like?
It was great. It's my first time. So my dad, being the pastor of the church, he was the pastor of the church, and so he had no choice but to make me the head coach. Yeah. I kind of made sure, but we would always get ready for tournaments at the end of the year, and so we would play. They were high school kids who would play other high schools along the way, and I learned valuable lessons like don't compromise on integrity. Like, I mean, if there's guys that you think are good enough, sometimes when you're young, you think everybody's super talented, but you realize if they think that they can skip steps in order to get there. And I just thought some guys could because they were better than me. And I realized that through that whole process, you can't skip steps. And we won. We were fortunate to win and win quite a bit there, and just constantly had a hunger to move on and to help other guys in similar situations. But that kind of started my path.
Yeah, skipping steps. Definitely can't skip steps.
Cannot skip steps in this game. This game honors people who'll put days together. And it isn't as if it's something you can occasionally do and be good. I just thought people were naturally talented because I'd go to the park or you'd be at a high school open gym and you'd just watch guys jump.
Yeah.
And you're like,
no
okay, that's natural.
No warm up.
And they're just out there doing things that you can't do.
Yeah.
And so you just thought that, man, maybe they have an ability or things that they can't. And the older I got, the more I realized that there is no skipping steps. There's no natural ability. I mean, we're all watching LeBron now in year 20. And I mean, I saw him just talking through this whole process of winning the other day. And I'm still amazed by it. And that's a guy who's considered one of the best ever, who still just doesn't miss days, and who does it the right way. And you realize if a guy like that doesn't miss days and doesn't skip steps, there's no reason to think anybody else can.
Yeah, speak on that. Yeah, when I first transferred to Roosevelt Catholic in New Jersey, so I get there and it's 5-star guys in there. And
famous school.
Yeah, there are no warm-up windmill and stuff like that. I'm from Georgia. Don't nobody know me. And so, I come in there and it's like, I got to earn everything, so to speak. So I didn't really play that much in the beginning. Played towards the end, but like every day, my uncle would get me up at 5 a.m. and work out at 6. And it was like the days I didn't want to go, he dragged me in there. I'm falling asleep in class, all this type of stuff. And I'm just like, I still feel like I'm not jumping as high as them. I'm not like they're still, that kind of was better than me. But then over time, like especially, as I've gotten older in college and stuff like that, I see what he was really instilling in me was the work ethic part that you just can't turn on, turn off. It's just something that, stays on. And over time, you get better like 1% every day. And that over time is better than just, doing something for 30 days and then turning it off. And
no doubt.
Relying strictly on talent, athletic ability. I mean, there's guys I've played with that you would think would be first-round draft picks that are, overseas or in the G League or not even playing right now that I remember vividly. Like, yeah, he can go first round. He was, at Kentucky. He was at, these 5-star schools and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it got to a point to where like, I was working out so much, and I'm like, okay, this got to pay off. And then it's time to sign the schools and stuff, and I don't have no big schools.
Right.
I got Cal Poly. Shout out to Cal Poly, but people was asking me like, is that D1? Is that? And it was just a slap in the face a little bit. Like, dang, you don't even think I can go D1? Like, stuff like that. But the best thing about it was that I had the opportunity to play, and that kind of meant more to me in the long run because I got time to experience on the floor. As a freshman, I'm playing 24, 25 minutes a game. Granted, it wasn't the best team, it wasn't the best conference, but that experience is it's priceless.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the thing that you realize, especially when you're younger, is you see guys that are fast or you see guys that can jump, and you think that means they're great basketball players.
Yeah.
I see you in warm-ups and you can do a windmill. Man, that means you're really good. And what you realize over the time is it doesn't really mean a whole lot,
At all. It just means you jump high.
Yeah, it just means you jump high.
Yeah.
And you could be a really good track athlete. It doesn't make you necessarily a good basketball player.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of like low moments, like what would you say is a low moment in your coaching career, and how did you kind of persevere through that?
Yeah. I would tell you that the thing that probably keeps you up at night and you're really disappointed about are players that it doesn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they're falsely accused of something.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff really bothers me for whatever the reason. Let's say a particular player gets injured, and you know how hard it is on him mentally and physically, and you know the work that they've put in. And so I think more so than, there's obviously losses I remember.
Yeah.
I'm probably like every other coach in the world that I hate losing more than I like winning.
Yeah.
Winning you kind of expect to do. I didn't expect anything different. So when you win, it's like that's par for the course. That was what we all worked towards, right? And when you lose, it's like, this is not what I prepared for. So that kind of stuff eats at you. But more so, I think individual players that if something doesn't go their way, meaning an injury, they're falsely accused, they have a group of people who may be against them.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that kid may not see the vision right now, and you have to explain to him it's not in year 1, it's going to be in year 3.
Yeah.
And I know you don't get that right now. And the analogy that I always use is you may be hungry and we could eat a steak, and I could go around the corner to the grocery store, get one, microwave it, and 20 minutes later we can eat one. Or we can do this properly, let it grill, let it sit overnight, let it marinate, and then in 48 hours we're going to cook it at the right temperature. You're going to eat either way, but one's going to go down a whole lot better than the other. And so trying to explain this whole process of how this stuff works, and you may get frustrated with a player who doesn't. A lot of that sometimes is just maturity. Yeah. And right now they don't understand it. They don't see it. And so I think that kind of stuff probably bothers me more than anything else. If you're trying to rush the process, or you don't understand the bigger picture, or you're injured. But I get more hung up. The low lifes for me that I can vividly remember are when players are in a bad case mentally, and they're not doing well, usually due to nothing that they put themselves in.
Yeah.
It's false accusations or it's injuries. Those kind of things are the things that keep me up at night, and I get bothered by it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, man. Like, there's certain times where, you as a player, you just feel like things don't go your way.
Yeah.
And it's like there'll be times where I question, like, is this really for me? Like, especially when I was in California, far away from home. I didn't really have a lot of family out there. We're losing games. And I'm like, how am I going to get to the next level? And I can't, dominate at this level, so to speak. But it's always, I've always had people in my corner that just tell me, like, you just got to think long game. You got to think, okay, you just have to work towards the end goal and just keep that in mind and only focus on the things you can control. You know, you can't control, you know, the coach take you out. You can't control this, you know, call, the way a game goes, you know. It's only but so many things you can control. But I control, you know, my attitude. I control if I get up and, you know, work out today. If I get up, go to class, even though I don't want to go to class, you know, all that type of stuff. And when I look back on it, you know, I'm thankful for the coaches and mentors that I had, because if I didn't, I probably would have, you know, still been out there, or, you know, I may have given up on the dream, so to speak. Like, I know a lot of players now that I talk to, especially younger guys, that I just tell them, like, y'all have no clue. Like,
they don't. Like,
5 years from now, it could be totally different. Like, you know, who would have thought I'd be at Wichita State now? Right. You know, starting at Cal Poly or going to Roosevelt Catholic. Like, I was just a kid in Georgia at Newton County High School, barely playing as a sophomore on varsity, and I go to this premier school in New Jersey. I'm playing Montverde Academy once a year. You know, I'm in the gym with coaches, you know, Kentucky, UConn, Syracuse, Rutgers, you name it, Seton Hall. You know, everything just switched in literally 2-3 weeks, and my whole trajectory of basketball just changed. So, like, I definitely understand, you know, being in that headspace as a player, and if you don't have that outlet as a coach, or just, you know, someone that can just keep you focused on the main thing, it could definitely make a difference.
Yeah, I tell every player this: you are gonna want to quit, and every player who's ever played has had those moments. Like, I'm good. Yeah, like, let me move on to something else, right? Because it's hard. You know, I was around Brittany Griner every day during my 4 years at Baylor. I was listening to Brittany Griner talk about her Russia experience the other day. And they asked her, hey, how were you so resilient during that whole process? And she said, I remembered hard practices and that need to dig deep in those moments and kind of, I do have something else in me. But every player in the world is going to want to quit if you've ever been pushed, and you're going to lean back on your support. And your support will say, you know what, you should quit. Or they're going to say, listen, you need to keep going. And you can kind of get in a place mentally where, all right, let me check out. Or, you know what, this is on me. Like, I do have a responsibility here with the gift I'm given to continue to pursue this. I'm not hurt. I'm not being abused. Nothing's wrong. It's just hard, right? Things in life are hard, as we listened to Brittany Griner talk about the other day. And so I heard the other day, 95% of all Fortune 500 company CEOs have played college sports.
Really?
Why? Yeah, it's a crazy stat. And why? I think they understand commitment. I think they understand organization. I think they understand resilience and fighting through adversity. Whereas if that has never been built up in you, those first waves that hit you, you're like, let me get back on the shore. You know, and why go through this? And so I do think that ability and the support, listening to you, that stuff matters. And you do have to be around people who kind of understand the bigger picture here. I love Jay-Z's lyric in So Ambitious, where he says, lack of ambition, no vision, so whack, right? Like, if you can't think ahead and understand that, man, there are difficult times, but there is an end goal to this. And if you can't think through and have a vision to that end goal, it is whack. And it's going to end up hurting you in the long run. And so I think people who have a hunger and have an ambition and they see the vision, those are the people who usually carry it out in whatever facet of life we're talking about.
Yeah. Speaking of that support group and being around people that have that ambition, how was it at Baylor? You know, that coaching tree is Matthew Driscoll's at North Florida, head coach of North Florida. Graham McCaslin's head coach at Texas Tech. Obviously, Jerome Tang's head coach at K-State. Now you're head coach at Wichita State. I mean, how was that time at Baylor with those guys?
Well, it wasn't good at the beginning. We won one game my second year. The entire year in our conference, we finished 1-18, and so it was a long year.
Yeah, I know about that.
but I do remember that Winston Churchill says the definition of success is to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. Like, we were able to, like, we were still motivated. You know, I think anytime you get setbacks or lose, you're like, all right, I got to get better. I got to get better. And we knew we had to get better as a team. We knew we had to get better as a staff. And then my last year there, we were #1 in the country. And so I watched the pendulum swing. But I was around really good people.
Yeah.
I mean, Scott Drew is a Hall of Fame coach. We were also next to Kim Mulkey. And she was in our offices every day. She just won a national championship at LSU and won several of them at Baylor. And so I was around high-level coaches who genuinely cared about their players. Matthew Driscoll is the most energetic man you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
He's the all-time winningest coach at North Florida. Grant won a national championship as a junior college coach, and now the head coach at Texas Tech. His kids would be at my house. My kids would be at his house. I've known him for 25, and I used to think Jerome was just crazy basketball-wise. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We'd get in arguments probably just like players.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you his stance on Kevin Love, but I had the right stance, and Kevin Love turned out to be a really good player. But we would talk about this stuff constantly, and I knew that all of these guys I just mentioned were consumed with helping players. And I think if your motivation is how do we help players, I think you're going to be successful, because if the players aren't doing well, the team is not going to do well. And so they had genuine hearts for helping guys, and they kind of inspired me and fueled me through this whole process. So to be around a group of men, Scott Woods, Coach Drew would often tell us, many hands make light work. And like, this isn't just one person doing the job. Like, I'm relying on everybody, much in the same way as a team, right?
Yeah.
It isn't just Steph Curry. It isn't just LeBron. And to know that you had a group of coaches who all were the same way. We all genuinely cared about our players. I knew that they would be successful as coaches.
Yeah, you know the saying, it takes a village.
Yeah.
I mean, I know in my life, like, I mean, my parents, obviously, they sacrificed a lot. But even, like, my sister, like...
They're getting you J's at 4 a.m., bro.
Yeah, give me J's at 4 a.m., driving me to AAU practices. My sister, you know, sacrificing, taking time away so she can come to my basketball tournaments. Even just saving money to, you know, before I was on a shoe team, you know, saving money to buy hotel rooms and rent cars and, you know, for those YBOA national tournaments and, you know, all that type of stuff. Seeing them create those or do those sacrifices for me is like, okay, this makes me have to go even harder to me. And even coaches, like coaches I've gotten close with that let me use the gym, that don't, you know, make me pay for the gym, like little stuff like that. I mean, all that stuff kind of helps in a way, and it like solidifies it for me to be like, okay, I have to keep going. I mean, you know, I may not be able to get to the NBA, but I still got to keep going, and you know, till the wheels fall off. You know, I can't just stop and come this far and stop.
Right.
Especially with everything that everybody sacrificed for me.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely feel like the people I've been around that genuinely just want to see me do good. And, it's an energy that just rubs off on me and just makes things just that much better for me. So what would you equate like your emphasis on just? I mean, since I've known you, you've always emphasized your willingness to just help players. Like, what does that really come from?
Yeah. Well, I watch people help me. You know, I was kind of a knowledge seeker. Yeah. People who I knew were good. So, Coach K, I would go to Durham, North Carolina to work camps and to be around that. And Coach K invested in me. Now, it was 20 minutes just talking to me, but that did a lot for me. That there were other coaches who I really valued, who I would put myself around. There were players. I knew that players, I don't know why coaches just go to coaches. I was around really good players. I mean, I live next to the Houston Rockets practice facility. And so I saw Charles Barkley. I saw Akeem Olajuwon. John Lucas, who was the first pick in the NBA draft, I was with him every day for 3 years and just picking his brain on things and helping him work out guys. And so, you know, just being around players, being around coaches as a knowledge seeker, I think you kind of filter all of that into how can I use it? Yeah. And what I realized is the coach who treats you differently after you score 40 versus after you score 2, they only love you for the basketball player.
Yeah.
You know, the coach that could treat you the same, whether you scored 2 or whether you went for 40. I usually get harder on guys if they go for 40 because we're not going to let this ego get out of control. And I usually try to build up the guys that scored 2, like you're going to be okay. It happens. It happens to everybody.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was just around guys, players who explained it to me, coaches who were really good at their jobs, explain the way players were thinking. And I think all of those things kind of like, not only did it fuel the passion, but it helped me be a better listener and be a better coach.
Yeah, speaking of, like, I think I'm a knowledge seeker as well.
Yeah.
I like having conversations with, you know, older people, you know, especially just because I feel like they've lived life longer than me. They have something to give. Even if it's not basketball related, even if it's just like, you know, life related, just some wisdom.
Yes.
I've always tried to seek knowledge and try to, even if it's something that I'm not even really interested about, I try to just ask them about it, stuff like that. Just because, like, you know, you never know when you might need it. You know what I'm saying? So I feel you on that. If you were like, what advice would you give to like a young coach or a young, like, rising high school athlete, D1 basketball, or want to play D1 basketball? Like, what advice, especially with this new world of college sports with NIL and transfer portal and all, like, it's from when I came in or when I graduated 2019, it's completely different.
Totally different.
So what would you?
Man, I would. I tell the same thing to college players. Let's be a good college player.
Yeah.
We're thinking too much about the NBA or being a pro right now. You're never going to get there until you're a good college player. So let's figure out how to be a good college player. I tell the same thing to a high school player. Yeah. Like, let's figure out how to be a good high school player. Like, what are the things? So if you're a point guard, there's certain things you need to do. If you're a wing, if you're a big, what are the things? And I would tell you, you do have to do something better than average. I like Jay-Z. I listened to Jay-Z. I was quoting Jay-Z earlier, right? And so, like, people don't pay for average. So Jay-Z doesn't make the money he makes because he's just the same as everybody else, right? Yeah. You have to do something better than everybody else. What is that? You know, what is the skill set that you have that allows you? So if you're a point guard, if you're a wing, if you're a big, what is that? People aren't paying for average. You are not getting a scholarship because you're just like everybody else. Yeah. So if that is shooting the ball, man, get good at shooting the ball. I think so many players jump into what is my weakness and how do I get better at that? And let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 3 as a ball handler and you work your tail off all summer and you become a 5. All right. You're average, you know? All right, what are you a 7 at? And how do we become a 9 at? What are we an 8 at? And can we get to a 10 to where we're better than anybody else? And I think so many players concentrate on, oh, this is my weakness. And I'm not telling you don't have to address them. But at the end of the day, people are not paying for average. They're not giving you a scholarship because you're like everybody else. Let's be a really, really good high school player. And let's figure out those 1 or 2 things that, man, I'm a lead at this. Dennis Rodman is the greatest rebounder that has existed with that one unique skill set, right? Like, what else could Dennis Rodman do? I don't know. But he could win because he did that better than anybody. And he parlayed it. I'm sure he's probably tricked it off by now, but he parlayed it into a lot of family impact for himself and for the people around him. So, you know, let's be really good. Let's be better than average at those 1 or 2 things. And let's not even worry about D1 right now, D2, D3. You're elite if you can get a scholarship. 98% of kids do not ever go beyond high school who play. So you're already elite. So let's just focus right now on being a good high school player. What is the 1 or 2 things I need to work on to make that happen?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Because even when I was in high school, I mean, I could always shoot the ball, but it was like, in my head, I'm like, man, I need to be able to dribble. I need to be able to do this and do that. I don't want to be one-dimensional.
Catch a body.
Yeah, all that type of stuff. And it was like, my uncle was like, no, we're gonna shoot. Like, we're gonna get this to where it's elite. To where even if you can't dribble, everybody gonna know you can shoot. And So that's all we kind of really focused on and hammered on, especially in all my workout stuff. It was shooting off the move, off the catch, when I'm tired, deep, off the pull up,
off the bounce, whatever.
Everything. Any type of shots that I was shooting, like I was getting shots up every day. Even days where like holidays, like Christmas. All right, we celebrate Christmas in the morning, then around 2-3 p.m. we're gonna go shoot. I'm like, bro, like
so you missed the game on Christmas Day. You didn't watch whoever was playing.
Didn't watch no game.
I always watched the game and then hooped afterwards.
Didn't watch no game. It's snowing. It's snowing. Icy roads. Like we still gonna go shoot. Gym closed. We gonna find a way to get in and shoot. My high school coach would even make jokes like after games, like it'd be like, all right, we're off tonight. We're off tomorrow, but we know Kobe's gonna be in the gym sleep. And I'm like, you gonna make a joke, like at least be happy I'm in the gym. But but definitely like to hammer that one skill set.
Hammer those. Nowadays the game has changed. I do think even 8-10 years ago you could have one. It's just become so 5-out oriented. Yeah. Now you got to be. I mean, it's in the days where you just threw to Shaquille O'Neal on the block. The game's totally. And so you see a Jokic. Not only can he pass, the dude can really handle, and his finishing skills are elite. And so I do think now the game, because of the way that it's progressed, you do have to find definitely one. But if you can have something else in your arsenal, it will separate you. But again, people are not going to give you a scholarship for being average.
Yeah. One thing too, I will say, I wish I would have started way earlier is watch film. I feel like if I'd have been watching film in high school, my IQ would have been that much higher. Because when I started watching film in college, like the things I would watch, I would go work on them. And then I would see them in practice, see them in games. And it was like, okay, that's the bridge I needed. Because like as a freshman, you hit that little freshman wall.
Yeah.
And you just like trying to figure things out. Then I started watching film and it's like, all right, everything's clicking. Like everything just started clicking. And everything started becoming like more read and react. And I'm like, okay, I know what this is. A big hedge. I'm going to attack the hip, then come back. And it was just like everything was just working that much more better. I didn't have to really think so hard on it. But I would say definitely honing that skill. But if you could watch film for sure, like watch film. I think film is.
I heard Magic Johnson. He's talking to about 10 of us one time, and I was in L.A. and had the privilege to listen to Magic, and he said that was the best ego thing for me because my ego was way up here when I went to Michigan State. Yeah. And then Judd Heathcote, his coach, would bring him in and watch film, and he'd walk out of there, shoulders down, head down, going, I'm really not that good.
Yeah.
Because you're watching it. In your mind, you think you're good. And then when you watch it, you just say, maybe this is areas I need to tighten up. In high school, they don't have the resources usually from a film perspective. And so I would tell everybody, if there are resources available, especially at the collegiate level, there's plenty. Get in there and put as much of this on your eyes as possible because it'll translate and it'll help you go further, faster. That's what good coaches do, in my opinion. Michael Jordan was going to be Michael Jordan. Didn't really matter who his coach was, but what may have taken him a year to progress to maybe could have been done in 10 months or 11 months. Yeah. Good coaches help you go further, faster. They can kind of accelerate the progress, but what accelerates the progress is 100% film.
Yeah, I mean, Synergy became like my best friend once I got the login and stuff like that. Yeah, I started, Synergy breaks it all the way down. Like
ISOs, pick and
rolls, handoffs, even like break plays, jailbreak plays, spot ups. I'm looking at all the stats and I'm like, okay, I average like 0.9 points per spot up.
Man, I'm impressed. Points per possession. All right.
Yeah, I watched all that stuff and I would just watch like, okay, I'm gonna just watch all my possessions, my misses included, like not just the makes. Like let me watch my misses. Like okay, this was short. I see why my feet was wide. All that little like type stuff. So film definitely became my best friend. And I mean, I'll admit I'll be watching it in class like while the teacher's talking. I'll just be watching film. You know what I'm saying? Or watching highlights.
We do not condone that, kids.
I'll be honest with you though. When you first got the job, I seen some videos of you coaching. Mm-hmm. And it was like some video, I think it was maybe North Dakota State. And And I guess I've seen all the passion and stuff. Like, how do you react to those videos? Like, you just look at them, like, just laugh?
Well, no. The North Dakota State, Dave Richmond at North Dakota State, the head coach there, is a phenomenal coach. He's not a good coach. He's a great coach.
Yeah.
And he and I had talked a number of times, and I said something to him that I thought I could say to another coach. And wrong decision. I should have known better. It's kind of like what your mom told you. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And I immediately called Dave after the game and said, I apologize. I actually never thought it would get beyond me telling him what I thought and him telling me what I thought. But what is very natural is players see two coaches exchanging a comment, and coaches kind of intervene, or players intervene. And my players were going to defend me. His players were going to defend him. And it became something neither of us two wanted. It was a valuable lesson for me. I should have gone to the locker room. I've realized, don't, like, in the moment, it's probably not a good idea. In fact, it's probably best to sleep on it and then think through. But Dave explained his situation. He and I talked later that evening, and I kind of understood where he was coming from. I told him what I was thinking, and he said, man, I get it. And I am, there's moments that you regret. I should have just walked to my locker room. They dominated us that game. And, I should have left, should have taken my mother's advice. If you don't have anything nice to say. And we see that, right? There's situations where emotions are high, and we wish we would have walked away from them. Like, man, it was probably more prudent to do this. And you tell your players that. And I didn't, and I owned it with my players and apologized to my guys. But it wasn't anything over the top, in my opinion. It was really just two colleagues exchanging comments. I thought that would be the end of it, and we would move on. But became a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Now, I'll be honest, as a player, seeing a coach with passion, I call it passion. I don't really think it's nothing more than that. I think we've all played the game. Like, obviously, to the outside fan, it may be like, oh, he's out of line or something like that. But we all know it's passion involved. It's not no malicious intent.
No, there wasn't anything malicious. And I'll tell you, I had a high school coach who would get up in my face, and he was, in my mind, he was 100 years old, at the time, and he wasn't. But, the spit would be coming out, and he'd be frothing at the mouth, and it was usually over something defensively. And I loved it. I was just like, man, this guy cares so much about me being in a stance. Like, man, and at his age. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world that somebody found something they loved so much, and they wanted to make sure that their players understood that it was important to him. And there are some players who don't like that kind of stuff. I was not one of those guys. And I do, there are things that are important to me, and you're not going to compromise on it. I tell people that had I not been a coach, I would probably be a civil rights attorney, because if I see injustice, George Floyd grew up in Houston, those kind of things like rile me up. And I think we're all wired differently. And when you see things like that, certain things come out of you that other things don't bring. The game does that for me. Injustice brings that for me whenever I see it. If I wouldn't have been a civil rights attorney, I'd have probably been a pastor, and somebody who's passionate about speaking something that's important to them. And so I think all of those things, whatever it is, you kind of have to figure out how you're wired and what's important to you. And there's things about the game, more specifically players, that'll bring something out of me than me and you just talking right now, right? And if I ever think somebody else is being disrespectful to one of the guys that I coach, I'm going to usually stand up for that one.
Yeah. Nah, I definitely like the passion, but you lost me with the spitting, though. I can't go for the spitting. So this is a little, our next segment, a little fast break. I call it. I'm just going to ask you maybe 4 questions. Let's start top 5 players of all time.
Oh man, I'm not any good at this. I'm really not. I've heard players discuss this one all the time. But Michael Jordan is. I'm just telling you. I had 27 posters of him in my room. I had one on my ceiling so that when I woke up, he was the first thing I saw. That's how much I love Michael Jordan. I slept with his basketball. You'll see pictures of this at some point during the season because I played with the same Michael Jordan ball. I took it in the tub and washed it at the end of the night so I could sleep with it.
Really?
And my parents have pictures of it. So I washed the ball before I went and took a shower.
Yeah.
I made sure the ball was clean before I was. And so it starts with me with Michael Jordan. After that, I really I love Kobe. I'd put Kobe in my top 5. Akeem Olajuwon, I was around that. He would definitely be the center. Is Magic Johnson my point guard? And the answer is yes. Yeah. And then I'm going with LeBron. So there's my 5.
That's not a bad 5. I would say for me, I agree. Michael, Kobe. I would say LeBron. I would say Shaq.
Okay.
And I gotta go Curry.
Steph Curry. I like it. I like it.
I gotta go Curry. But who would you have as your top coach of all time?
Wow. I tell you that, for me, it was my high school coach, Walt Kaiser, simply because it's so personal to me. It's hard to, there's coaches like Mike D'Antoni's been a 2-time NBA Coach of the Year. I was talking to him last week, and he's revolutionized the game with what he did at Phoenix with Steve Nash, and even how he just let James Harden cook when he was at Houston. And I just thought his thought process, and I think he's a phenomenal coach. But it's hard to understand how good coaches are without really knowing them. That may be one thing publicly, but what if they're just jackholes as people? And they're like saying this, that, and the other behind players' backs, or they're doing things to players that nobody ever knows about in the way that they converse with them and making these players not feel valued. So that's hard for me to say, but Walt Kaiser was my high school coach. What called me after we beat Ohio State in the Sweet in our first round game in 2021 and was giving me advice on what, and I was like, you don't even know our team, but I love you anyway. And so I think the best coach is for all of us are probably the ones who influence us the most in a positive way. Yeah,
that makes sense. Any pregame rituals?
Yeah, I do. I listen to Psalm 118, and then I usually everything's pretty scripted, and I listen to on the Joel app Psalm 118, and it's a reminder for me that whether we win or lose, God is good, and I need to remind myself of that. And then the other thing, this one varies. Listen to gospel, so it's usually Tasha Cobbs Leonard. On most occasions, CeCe Winan was pretty much my go-to this year. But it's usually one of those two. It's either Tasha Cobb Leonard or CeCe Winan. But both of those, I can't go wrong with either way. It's usually just one song, though. It's like, one of those, and I'm ready to tear down the wall. Yeah.
I'll normally, depending on the timing, I'll normally take a nap right after shoot around, quick little 30-minute, 45-minute nap. And if it's a home game, I like to be the first one on the floor. I like to shoot for the game. But if it's a away game, I'll wear my uniform shorts to the locker room, have my socks on, all that. So when we get there, I just got to take my sweats off, put my shoes on. I already got my tank top or whatever under, and I go right out and shoot.
That's good. I think it's good that players have a mental approach to the game that they do. For me as a coach, I know I do, and I think it's cool when players do too. It's like that moment where, all right, here we go.
And then during the Star Spangled Banner, or when they sing the national anthem or whatever, I'll use that moment to just kind of breathe and calm down, and because when I'm shooting, I like to be locked in. But then once I'm done shooting and we're just warming up, I like to joke around. I like to, because I don't want to be too locked in for too long, because then I feel like I'm burnt out. And then I'll take that time to really get refocused, and then starting 5 or whatever, and then it's tip off. And
so I feel like I'd be a great American Idol judge, and so I usually judge the singer. That's how I'm sitting there she ain't hit that one, or oh man, she is on point. Yeah, that's too much. That's too much CC whining for me because she's so good. So I usually just listen to the song and I'm over there judging them. So I'm pretty judgy on the road or at home.
Yeah, that's funny. So I know Hoosiers your favorite movie.
I love Hoosiers.
Yeah, I've seen you. I read up some stuff that it like word for word.
Yeah.
Is there any other sports movies that you like?
Well, my favorite movie of all time is Hoop Dreams.
Hoop Dreams?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I've not seen Hoop Dreams.
Oh my goodness. You got to see Hoop Dreams. Hoop Dreams is a documentary about 2 kids in Chicago.
Yeah.
Arthur Agee is one of them, and they're both of them are poor. One of them gets, who Isaiah Thomas is?
Definitely
Detroit Pistons, right? So one of them they both go to the same high school that Isaiah went to. Isaiah grew up in Chicago. And one of them is not considered good enough.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get to stay at the high school, and the other one is. And then it's funny to watch how their paths turn out through the game of basketball. It's also interesting to watch the manipulation and all the things that go on behind the scenes from trying to pull this kid this direction and that direction and promising him this, because they both get recruited at a really high level. And they both go through the whole experience that you'll probably be very familiar with. But it's the off the court stuff that kind of makes you think, what are we doing with this game, and how is it helping young men? And then it also takes them out of a situation and gets them an education. So there's a lot of pull. You need to carve out. I think it's a 2.5-hour documentary, but it is tremendous. Hoop Dreams is easily my favorite movie of all time.
Hoop Dreams? I gotta watch
Hoop Dreams.
I'll be honest. I like He Got Game.
Yeah.
White Man Can't Jump.
Okay.
Coach Carter.
I know the original Coach Carter.
Really?
He's a friend.
Really?
Yeah. So I'll have to, if you like Coach Carter, I got to get you to talk to him.
Yeah.
He's the same way. The way that he is with Samuel L. Jackson is that's how he is in person.
Really?
He will. He'll talk to you crazy.
And Glory Road.
I like Glory Road. I have a former player who I coached at Rice University who was a star in that movie.
Really?
On the basketball side. Yeah. I like Glory Road. That one's good.
Yeah, so those are my top basketball movies. And the last one, I guess one interesting thing that nobody knows about you.
Man, I don't know. Nobody knows,
or that most people won't know unless they.
Yeah, my
something.
daughter tells me that I go through phases because I really don't have any hobbies. Like if I'm not at the house, I'm at the office, and if I'm not at the office, I'm at the house. And I'm either with my family or I'm usually watching film, and it's usually one of those two things. My daughter will tell me that I get bored and I go on these kicks and so last year I went fishing 10 days in a row. Yeah. And I have no desire to go fishing now. And so there's these little phases that you'll just go through where you feel like, man, this is what I'm jumping into. And usually every summer it's something different. I'm too busy this summer to jump into anything else. And so those are things that are probably routine for me each and every summer because I just get bored. Like, how much longer till basketball season? Yeah. So you try to kill all this mental energy and physical energy some way, but I've got enough to occupy me with Shocker basketball right now.
Yeah, I could imagine. I ain't never been fishing though.
Man, you gotta go. I'm happy to take you fishing. Yeah. Quincy AC. When I coached him at Baylor, he would leave practice and have his fishing gear and go straight fishing. He was the one player, whereas one other that I was around that really loved it. And I'd never been around guys who enjoyed it. So I'd do it as a kid, not a lot, but I got to take you fishing. If you do it, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard you gotta have like a lot of patience. With
No,
fishing,
it depends.
Depends.
Who you're with.
Yeah.
So I go with guys who know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So you'll catch fish with me, I promise.
All right, then. One day we're gonna have to set that up so we can go fish.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's about everything. Kind of wrap this up. Appreciate you being the first guest on the pod.
Colby, thank you. Colby's Corner, it was an honor. We hope I didn't bore anybody. You're the entertainment here, but thank you so much for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to thank you. I want to thank the production crew. I want to thank Doodah Diner for letting me have the pod here. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in. Hopefully we can get you guys on the next episode and support Colby's Corner podcast. And I see you guys on the next episode. Peace.